Best of r/Tales from Tech Support episode 24. When I got the ticket it had been open for 6+ months, gone through 5-6 technicians on first, second, and third line, and they've done pretty much everything humanly possible short of swapping out the whole computer, but nothing has helped. There's probably around 8100 tech hours put into this so far. Weird thing is, the error message is clearly logged and it points to a known issue. Could the other techs really have missed this? Nope. The first tech emailed a customer a link to the update that fixes the issue inside of 15 minutes from the first call, and I see 3 other techs have directed the customer back to that first email with instructions to install the fix. Each time the customer has responded that she did, but it didn't cause any change in the problem, still getting the same error message. I had a gut feeling, and sent her the link to the update again, this time saying that hey, I've got something new for you to test. And the next morning I call the customer. Hi, I emailed you a link to a new patch which should fix the problem you are having with game. Have you had a chance to try it? Customer, yeah, I did and the game's working now, but this is shitty support. Entirely unacceptable to wait 6 months. Think of my poor son who hasn't been able to play his Christmas present. Goes off on a rant about how much we suck. I'm sorry to hear that, but if I could ask you just one thing. See, the link I sent you is exactly the same one that we sent you on the very first day you called us. And I see in the log that you replied to that email saying you had installed it, but that it didn't change anything. Is that correct? Customer, the first link? No, I didn't bother with that one. Everyone knows that the first thing you suggest never works, so I just said I did. I can't believe it took you 6 months. How are you going to explain this to my son? Winding up the rant again. Sorry ma'am, looks like we sent you the solution on the very first day, but you chose not to follow the instructions. But as things are now working, I'm going to close your ticket, and I'll leave it up to you to explain to the kid why it took so long. Thank you. Next. Hello, first time poster here. There's not too much excitement to this story, just thought I'd share about one of our regular clients. I work for a local company that fixes computers and phones. We have a lot of elderly customers because of where we live. Retirement Central. Elderly man, who is a regular, purchased a newer MacBook Pro to replace an older one. He writes picture books for children through Pages. He brings us cupcakes and food every time he stops by. He stops by often because he can't ever remember his Apple ID PW and doesn't have anyone else to help him reset it. He came in this time because he couldn't get his new MacBook connected to his home Wi-Fi and it turned into a 2-day long event. Day 1. Elderly man, walks through the door, says hello, looks around quietly for a second. What is a password? Coworker 1, explains what a password is and looks flabbergasted considering what his main complaint is every time he comes by. Elderly man, what's my Wi-Fi password? Coworker 1, advises old man to contact local internet provider to reset it. Elderly man, thanks us and leaves. Day 2, he calls the next day and I get the call. Elderly man, I can't seem to get Pages on my MacBook Pro. I can't remember my Apple ID so I can't get it from the App Store. I found a link on the internet instead that said you can get Pages plus 2 other free programs, so I downloaded that but it didn't work. I went and found another link and downloaded that too, but it still won't work. Me. Okay. Come back and bring the MacBook with you and we'll get it sorted out for you. He comes in later that day, drops off his MacBook. I tell him to come back later. Give me an hour. I removed everything he downloaded because they were not anything he wanted to have on his computer. He already said he doesn't remember his Apple ID. He doesn't have 2FV turned on, because we turned it off when he came in for the 5th time to reset his PW. I guess his Apple ID from the only email address he uses in the mail app and go to I forgot. Com to reset it. I reset his Apple ID PW by sending the reset link to his email. It comes to his mail app and I open it. Reset PW. Download Pages for him from App Store. He comes back. I ask to see his phone iPhone XR and enter a new Apple ID PW. I don't want to bore him with details, so I tell him I removed the programs he downloaded, advised him to use the App Store to download from now on or call me first. Also told him I reset his password and I saved it in his notes. I also remember what it is now so he can call me if he can't remember it. I still remember his password, and with ease. He's awesome, just needs lots of help. I only do this kind of thing with a customer's password and device because it's him and we've known him for a long time now. He's due to come in soon again. I wonder what kind of cupcakes he'll bring this time. Thank you. Next. Oh geez. User comes into my office complaining of a real slow machine. Chrome is slow, Word is slow, everything is slow and computer is pretty hot. I was finishing up a draft of something real quick. Don't remember what. %me. Could you save and close everything down and restart the computer for me please? %user. Of course, sure. Not even a minute later she had closed everything and restarted the machine and hands me the machine. The restart of the machine went surprisingly quick considering that the %user was here for a slow machine. User proceeds to give the machine to me. %me. Did you restart the machine? %user. Yes. I found it odd so I decide to check the process monitor and oh god. I lost count of how many chromes I saw, how many Winward, eggs and everything else I saw. CPU 100%, RAM 100%. %me. Just a curious question. How do you restart the computer normally? %user. I close the lid and open it again and then I come to the login screen. I try to show her the right way to restart the computer but it would not even turn off for 5+ minutes. I end up force shutting down the computer but explain that it's the wrong way to reboot the computer and why I had to do it. During reboot I get a CPU fan error. Poor guy had worked so hard it had died. I guess because she had never rebooted the machine she had never got the CPU fan error. User later tells me that she's had this machine 2 years and never intentionally rebooted the machine the way I showed her, only close and open lid. After a new fan is installed and a fresh installation I could almost hear the machine thanking me. The computer must have restarted itself at least once, right? Or did she continuously postpone every cry for help? What do you think? Rest in peace unknown fan. You did your best. Live your best life in the recycling center. 3. Thank you. Next. I had to help out in a class today getting people logged into new iPads. Here's how it went. Cast, LT, the one running the show who set up the iPads lead technician. TA1, me, helping out the LT, technician assistant. TA2, new technician helping out as a way of learning about iPad setup teach, the class's main teacher. Not tech savvy. The 3 of us arrived to the classroom with 20 iPads to hand out. I was told we would be doing groups of 4 and cycle around the room, but as we walked in the teacher runs over and tells us they only have time to do everyone at once. We start by having TA1 and TA2 hand them out while LT puts the instructions on the board, about 15 steps. Teach yells out everyone sit down and shut up. No talking with your neighbors. We only have a short time to get through this so pay attention. Do exactly what LT tells you and nothing else. With that as our introduction LT started showing the students step 1 and step 2. Anyone have an issue with steps 1 or 2? No? Okay, let's move on to step 3. This is a little more complicated. Signing into Wi-Fi so TA1 and TA2 will walk around and help. As I circle around the classroom I noticed about a third of the students were still on step 1 while another third were on step 8+. One student yelled out what's the password for step 12? And then all chaos broke loose as others started yelling questions about every step from 115. LT, TA2, and myself. TA1 ended up running around helping the students one-on-one as everyone tried to get our attention, including Teach who only added to the chaos pointing us to students who were done with setup and had customization questions. At one point I was helping one student who couldn't understand the difference between his email address and email password, with another student across the room yelling TA1, 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 I have a question. TA1, and waving his hands in a way that would make inflatable waving arm men jealous, and the teacher on another side of the room waving the Wi-Fi login as if to say, why isn't this working? It's your fault. The students were of course happy to have the chaos to mask the fact they spent the entire time socializing instead of trying the steps on their own. After the amount of time it would have taken us to do everyone individually, as that is basically what we did in the amount of time we had scheduled for this. The teacher practically pushes us out of the classroom, muttering about how she doesn't have enough time now for her lesson plan and how we should be better prepared next time. Now I know this story might sound like a normal day to school IT techs out there, but I work for the government and this was a class full of 70k plus salaried auditors that use iPads every day for their job. I feel really bad for TA2 who, instead of standing back learning the procedure, was thrown to the wolves and had to teach herself. Thank you. Next. So, some backstory. I used to work tech support for a company that provided financial software. The software was installed locally and was authenticated using a Gemalto USB smart card reader. All users were issued with their own cards and a PIN. Fairly foolproof, or so I thought. I'd visited a site about 4 hours drive away a few months prior, installed the software and the smart cards on all the PCs that required them, and also hand-delivered the pre-encoded smart cards. Their PIN numbers were sent in the post separately, for security reasons. Completed the installs, then went to the manager of that team to distribute the smart cards and test them before I left the site. There were 8 cards but only 7 staff present. Manager said, "Oh, that's Sylvia's card. She's off on long-term sick. If you leave that with me, we'll sort her out when she gets back." No problem. That's me all done. I pack up my kit and leave. Fast forward about 3 months. I get a call from the manager on site that I spoke to on my last visit. "Hi, Sylvia's back and she's having some issues with her card and software. Can I patch her through to you?" "Yes, sure. Hi, it's Sylvia here. I'm afraid the machine has swallowed my card." "Hello Sylvia, when you say swallowed, what exactly do you mean?" "Well, I started the software and it asked me to insert my card into the reader, so I did, and now I can't get it back out." "Right, so just to clarify, is it stuck in the reader? What happens when you try to pull it out?" "Oh, I can't see it at all. It's disappeared into the machine completely. I can't see a cancel button anywhere to return it." Now just to clarify, these Gemalto readers are small handheld units that you slot the business end of a smart card into, with a digital display and a pin code pad. The card only goes in about an inch at most and it's pretty much physically impossible for a card to become stuck. Still, it was possible that the card may have been cracked or damaged and it may have gotten stuck in the reader, so I asked her to package the reader back up and send it back to us. "Okay, how do I get the reader out?" "Just follow the wire and it should just unplug from the back of your PC. "I can't see any wire. Do I need to take the PC apart?" Starting to lose patience at this stage. "No, it should just be on the desk under your monitor. Follow the wire back to the back of your PC and pull it out." "Oh wait, you mean this thing that looks like a calculator?" "That's it." "Okay, I've unplugged it. Can't see the card anywhere. It should be sticking out of the top. The card only goes in about an inch." "Ah, is this where I was supposed to put my card?" "Yes. Where did you think it was meant to go?" "The slot on the front of the computer that looks like the one on the cache point." "Right. Can you put your boss back on the phone? Explain to the boss that it sounds like she's shoved her smart card into one of the drives on her PC. He says he'll get his internal IT team to come down and take a look." He rings me back later that day to confirm that they found her smart card wedged inside the floppy disk drive. They eventually managed to get it out with some pliers, and as a precaution they left the drive out of her PC, and replaced it with a blanking plate to prevent further incidents. Thank you. Next. Hello everybody. I mostly lurk on TFTS and only post on that rarest of occasions. This tale was too hilarious to keep to myself. Background. I work for a small sales/service shop in a rural town. Lot of our customers are elderly or at least retired. Cast. $me, the man, the myth, the legend, at least in my own head. LTL, Looney Tunes lady aka the customer. LTLD, Looney Tunes lady's daughter. LTLDD, the daughter's dog. No speaking parts but he does have a small role. And now it's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show. This happened about a week ago. It was a grey, rainy day here in middle of Nowhereville. I was at my desk as usual. In walks this elderly lady. $me, good afternoon, how may I help you? The lady then spends about 2 minutes trying to remember why she was even there. Finally she remembers and starts telling me a tale about how she got a new computer back in the spring and the owner had dropped it off and set it up for her. However, In her opinion, he didn't know what he was doing and set it up wrong, and now she has no internet. About halfway through the story she stops, looks at me and says, $LTL, you're not the owner, are you? $me, no, I just work here. She continues, or rather restarts her story, and about every other sentence is he didn't know what he was doing. She says she wants someone to come out and fix it for her. Towards the end of this crazy story she stops suddenly and looks at me and says, $LTL, are you a girl? I may be in desperate need of a haircut, but I certainly don't look like a girl. I stare at her for a good 30 seconds trying to decide if this is a joke. Finally I tell her that no, I am not a girl. She then takes a step back and looks at me again and says, $LTL, oh okay, I see the facial hair. I guess you're boy. So I take her information and tell her that we'll be in touch to schedule a time. After she leaves I look around at her entry in our customer database and find a separate number for her daughter. I figured before I go ahead with any repairs, let me call her and get a better grasp of the situation. So the daughter and I talked, and turns out she really does have internet problems. She says she'd like to be there when I come to her mom's house. We schedule an on-site visit. Fast forward a few days, I arrive at the house. I'm greeted by $LTL, $LTLD, and $LTLDD. I'm shown to the computer and $LTL goes through her whole story again while $LTLD tries to get her to shut up. I sit down at the computer and see there is a modem/router right next to the computer. I open a browser and go to Google and it comes up no problem, at which point I declare that $LTL does indeed have internet. As soon as I say that, $LTL starts disagreeing with me. $me, you do have internet. See, I'm on Google. Just to prove my point I did a Google search. $LTLD, go to a website. $me, I did. I searched Google. $LTLD, no, I mean go to an actual site. So I do that, and a few others just to prove my point. I should note at this point that while I'm having this conversation with $LTLD, $LTL keeps telling me the same story over and over about how the boss didn't know what he was doing, how he was there for 2 minutes and left, etc., etc. And every time she does, $LTLD keeps telling her to shut up. $LTLD, Mom, stop. He doesn't need to hear you talking shitty about his boss. The two ladies begin arguing with each other, one on either side of me. After about 30 seconds, I tell them, $me, time out. I noticed you have some malware junk. Let me clean the computer just so you get something worthwhile out of the visit. Why don't you both go in the living room? Let me take care of this stuff and I'll let you know when I'm done. They both agree and I spend the next 45 minutes cleaning junkware off the computer. Every now and then $LTL comes back and tells me the same story yet again. One time she adds, $LTL, you don't send him out to people, do you? Because he doesn't know what he's doing. Meanwhile I'm getting a headache and wishing I'd brought aspirin along. I also come to realization that what I'm doing will more than likely not be a permanent solution. After I cleaned everything up I put a shortcut to the browser on the desktop and renamed it Internet. I also set up Facebook as a homepage. As I'm wrapping things up and trying to show mom and daughter what I've done, $LTLDD comes in and lays down on the rug. $LTL looks at the dog and says, $LTL, what's your name? I forget. Aren't you going to tell me your name? Then turns to the daughter and says, $LTL, he won't tell me his name. $LTLD, deadpan, imagine that. I just about lost my cool. That was by far the strangest customer encounter I've ever had. And I used to work in retail at a big box store. TL. Doctor, people are strange. Or just another day at the office. Thank you. Next. So I landed a computer tech job, fresh out of the military. I had been trained in electronics, and my preference was a computer-related job. This happened in the late 1990s. It turned out that I was to be the only person in the entire IT department. I would report directly to the manager of this facility. My job duties included technical support, computer installations, and some telephone systems management. Except for one little fact, this sounds a lot like other IT jobs in the 1990s. However, this was a call center. Back in the 1990s, a call center was all done primarily using POTS, plain old telephone service, watch lines, and basic trunk lines. Ours was not a typical call center. We had all new equipment, and in fact, we had one of the largest and highest cost systems around at the time. The main phone system, PBX, was a Lucent Definity, a behemoth that was bolted to the floor in my new office. I think it took 3-phase power, I kid you not, and it had a massive 5000 VA UPS backing it up. Our Lucent or Avaya, formerly AT&T, Definity system was populated with a handful of ISDN pre-lines in which each physical line into the PBX was capable of 23 simultaneous phone calls. We had at least 120 circuits. We also had a handful of POTS lines for good measure. There was a large number of station cards which allowed agents in the call center access to the phone network. Each station had a feature phone. We had voicemail on a server PC. We had direct inward dialing, a phone tree, least call routing, and tons of programming options. I was told at some point that all of these components had cost the company roughly $600,000. That was before a companion office was opened up next door and began sharing the switch. I would get overtime pay to go next door and work for the other office. Both offices were in the same corporation, but entirely different branches. This was a large facility. It was actually an old Walmart building that had been bought by our corporation due to its awesome location in the city. It was at a key point for telephone and data lines. There was actually a third office in the old Walmart that held data servers. Ironically, they had a different phone PBX, but also better LANs, and much better connectivity to the internet than we did. So net rings were new then, and they connected to one. In case I've confused everyone, there was account services in Suite A, data servers in Suite B, and a business office in Suite C. When I got hired to the company, there was only about 10 call center agents and a bunch of managers. There was a lot of hiring going on. We were in the ramp-up stage to get the facility up and functioning. This was a satellite call center to the original one in another state, which had reached its capacity. The other one was in another time zone and hundreds of miles away. My boss, let's call her Sherry. Sherry was a corporate ladder climber. She lived 200 miles away and commuted weekly to this job and rented an apartment nearby. Sherry had learned her skills at the primary call center. She was pretty good at a lot of things, but technically, she was lacking. So she had tired of making mistakes and being unable to troubleshoot stupid computer problems. Hence, me, young geek to the rescue. Wish me luck. Because this was quite an elaborate setup. We had hundreds of stations, each with a Windows 95 capable PC that was going to be installed with DOS programs. And all of the managers needed Windows 95 setup. All of the setup was done by me. These were Pentium 120 MHz systems or something. Why the computers? I'm glad you asked. First off, each agent received a PC for running a black screen, old text application. A server in my office room ran OS/2. I'll bet it's been a long time since you heard of OS/2. The app that ran on the OS/2 PC was a call center app. It was hooked to the Definity and to our TCP/IP LAN. Everything was running 3Com network cards at 10 megabits per second, while the folks in the server department next door boasted of 100 megabits per second speeds. My office ceiling was where every station's wires terminated to a 10 megabit per second switch. The server guys next door also mentioned having IP phones, a phenomenon which would make our call center's setup obsolete. Okay, so this is how it worked. Every time a call came into our call center, the Definity would find an agent. If an agent answered the incoming call, she was supposed to say, "Hello, this is XXXX account services, blah blah, blah." But as soon as the incoming caller's number was interpreted, her screen would automatically show a matching account name and number. We had 800 service and ONI, which is better than caller ID. This sped things up for inbound callers. Meanwhile, the server would also dial out and connect people the same way, and it was fast. "Hello, can I speak to?" Screen pops up with the correct name, Joe Ford, please. To the agents, they just heard a beep, saw their screen pop, and they would hear the 1990s classic greeting, "Hello?" This was a billing call center, so we were collecting accounts receivable. We had a PA system that blasted mind-numbing white noise the entire day on the floor, which made me retire to my even noisier office. So after a lot of initial setup work and learning my job, we had a few technical glitches. My boss was normally the one fixing things at first, but I eventually learned some things about this complicated call center. Basically, a lot of things were taken care of remotely. We had a few modems, and the other call center tech, salaried, would run reports and make changes. I noticed that my pay was pretty low, so I continued acting like an hourly guy and not overperforming. But I am a pretty observant kind of guy, and I ended up getting someone in big trouble once. Or twice. Sherry had babysat this facility for the entire construction phase. She talked about running all of the wires in conduit, the Cat 3 and 5 cables that went all over the facility. She had not only seen the cables run, but had coaxed them and helped them along. She told me that the air conditioner in my office cost $100,000. I hated that stupid thing. It was the noisiest piece of junk ever, sitting on the ceiling blasting 50-degree air into the room no matter the weather. The server room, my office, was set at 68, but I occasionally shut it off because I was freezing. It didn't take long to heat up that room, I might add. Well, one bored day, I decided to finally take stock of some things. I went over and looked at the phone system and all of its wires. I looked at the UPS. It was an APC Smart UPS brand, top of the line. It had a bunch of lights on it, one of which was always blinking. There were a lot of other rack mount UPSs in the room, but they didn't blink. This was a time of the nascent internet, the World Wide Web. I think I was able to download the manual and print it out, just to see what it was supposed to do. I was pretty green, and I wasn't familiar with UPS systems. Well, it turned out that the blinking light meant that the input voltage was high, always. That's odd. So me being the hourly guy, and this not being in my job description, I went home at 5 o'clock like always. Back at home, though, I decided to dig out my voltmeter and get to the bottom of this. The next day, I went around to the back of our, now, $800,000 Definity PBX. There was an unused 120 vac receptacle back there. The voltage tested high. That's really odd. Why is the voltage 138 volts? My next step was to go figure out this crazy building's electrical circuits. There was an electrical closet adjacent to the server room, across the wall behind the PBX. I wasn't allowed in there, but I peeked anyway. I started crawling all over the call center. The cubicles had 120 vac to them, and I started to see gremlins there, like floating voltages. By then, my boss asked what the problem was and I told her that our Definity system's power was bad and I was suspicious of the rest of the building. After some tense moments of reflection, I told my boss that I wanted to talk to the electrician who wired the call center. He reluctantly came, and I showed him the problems. After some arguing with me, he left. Everything was fine. But after some reflection and system knowledge, I finally had an answer. Delving deep into the realms of serial ports and baud rates, VT100 terminals and odd cables, I found a way for the APC Smart UPS to spit out some hard numbers. Its input voltage was running about 258 volts, past its 5% threshold, hence the flashing bucking LED on the front of the UPS. It had been blinking since the day I was hired, and presumably before. I now knew that the Definity's power outlet had high voltage because the electrician had tapped the transformer wrong. The improperly tapped transformer only ran the phone PBX's 240 vac outlet and the unused 120 vac outlet. I told Sherry to call the electrician back to come re-tap the huge transformer in the room adjacent to the server room. The entire server room would need to be taken offline, so we would need his services after hours. I would have to stay late for overtime. Trust me, there wasn't anyone that was happy with my assessment. The other call center bosses would definitely want to know. Sherry's boss wasn't happy, so at the end of the workday, we got everything secured and ready. Everything had to be turned off, and I mean everything. It was eventually just me, Sherry, and the electrician. We had some tense words, but Sherry decided to try and leave the huge Definity turned on and run it off the UPS. Remember the 5 kVA UPS? Yeah, the one that may not have been charging for the last 6 months because it was constantly bucking a high input voltage. The blinking UPS. Against my better judgment, we left the stupid refrigerator-sized PBX turned on and allowed the UPS to beep us to insanity for the next, I don't know, but it seemed like 2 hours. Everything eventually came back up, but since Sherry wanted no overtime for me, I was told to come in late the following day. When I came into work the next day around 10, the systems were still down and Sherry was on the phone with the salaried tech support guy trying to figure out what needed to be turned on after everything had been secured. She'd frequently get completely confused like this, so I often could fix things in a few minutes to her chagrin mixed with happiness. It was probably just a mistyped command or a switch left off. This was not the only boneheaded electric thing I found out at this wonderful job. Once we got more employees, there was the microwave incident. I was sent to investigate. It turned out that the electrician had thought that 2 massive industrial-grade microwaves could be on the same 20-amp breaker. When person A cooked his lunch and person B popped her popcorn, the breaker would trip. Solution: call the electrician to fix it for free again. IT department noob. 2. Electrician. 0.